Skylum is releasing Luminar AI, finally, and I couldn't be more excited. Let's take a look. Wow, look at the new user interface and all the cool new features to use and play with. That's so exciting. Wait, where's the bokeh AI? Where's the layers? Where's the histogram? Wait, why doesn't that? Oh, but no. Oh, no. No. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Yeah, that was a little overly dramatic, but it's a pandemic and I'm trying to make sure everybody gets a little happier. Something to laugh a little bit about. Welcome back to my channel. My name's Daniel Allen. I'm a Seattle-based photographer specializing in landscapes and portraits, and I just love doing post-editing in my photos. It's actually some of the most fun that I have with my photography is editing them in post. So that's what this YouTube channel is about, and that is what this particular episode is about too, with regard to Luminar AI. It's a new product released from Skylum, and it features a lot of artificial intelligence that is geared to try and make your photos as one-click edit friendly as possible. So instead of making you wait till the very end of the video, and I hope you watch the whole thing because I'm going to kind of go over things that I think it's missing and things it does well, and kind of give you a breakdown of all that stuff. But just to kind of summarize what you can expect, I am disappointed with Luminar AI. There is a lot of functionality from Luminar 4. I previously had Luminar 4, and I was one of the early birds to sign up for it. So I've had it for the last few days playing with it, and I'm very disappointed with the direction that they've chosen to go with this product. And I hope it is just for this Luminar AI, and with any luck, they will do a Luminar 5 release that is, geared more towards the professionals and people who don't want necessarily a one-click solution. Because when Luminar 4 came out, it was quite revolutionary. I mean, the sky replacement and things like the smart contrast and enhance AI enhance. I mean, those things I use regularly. I mean, they're fantastic. Not the sky replace so much, but the enhancement tools. It has done, and super contrast, smart contrast in the advanced section. I mean, some of that stuff is just boggles the mind the way it works. It would take a lot of work in Photoshop to try and duplicate some of those effects, and for that, I was sold on Luminar 4. And I was hoping that those things that were really great in Luminar 4 would be improved upon when you came over to Luminar AI. But they chose a different route. Instead, they decided that they wanted to kind of dumb it down a bit because, well, here, let me just read to you what customer service said to me. When I complained about some of the things missing, like for example, you were able originally to do multiple layers, layer the effects on there, which is really, really powerful. Because maybe I want different settings for some of the filters. For example, the glow or the Orton effect or something like that. Maybe I want a stronger setting in certain areas and a lower setting in others, or maybe completely different Orton effect settings in a different part of the photo. There's no way to do that right now with Luminar AI because the layers have been taken completely out. There is a local masking tool, which they say, gives you some basic functionality, like it's basically dodging and burning. It's pretty much all that it gives you the ability to do. There's some tonal corrections you can do, some saturation, things like that, but it doesn't give you the ability to access the entire feature set of Luminar AI like Luminar 4 did. And when I complained about that, they said, Indeed, we removed layers tools, but it was replaced with local masking tool. Let me clarify why we did that. While many feel that layers, masks, and selections are the only way to work, they can really slow you down, adding manual steps and extra processing time. Most of our tools make selections for you thanks to artificial intelligence, which is true, but the artificial intelligence kind of sucks. I mean, it doesn't get it right all the time, and there's no way to fix it when it gets it wrong. While we offer masking for every tool, you won't need it 95% of the time. AI perfectly handles the segmentation and application of tools to just the right areas. We've added a new local masking tool that lets you solve the problems that many rely on layers for. With it, you can make specific adjustments for individual areas or people. You can overlay textures or make targeted adjustments. Local masks are also easier to sync with multiple photos and can be stored in a Luminar AI template. The local masking tool eliminates the need for complex layers, bringing results and performance without clutter. And that is basically PR sales bullshit, quite frankly. You know, just to put it bluntly, I worry anytime people say many people. Which people? Who people? You know, it wasn't me. And, you know, the whole layers thing, it was pretty much hidden. It took me 3 months to even find that it was there in Luminar AI. It's hidden. And so the average person who just wants to come in and have a one-click solution, they're not finding that. You know, it's not available to most people. You have to know what you're doing to find it. So, you know, that's to be honest, bunk. And you know, when people start kind of telling you lies in as a way of addressing your concerns, it's kind of a red flag for me. But all of that said, you know, some of the existing functionality that was there still works, and it works really well. It's and you know, some of the things that they've taken away, I'm just livid about. But at the same time, there are workarounds for it, and I'll show you some of those workarounds here in this video. But in a nutshell, should you get Luminar AI? You know, I'm going to say it depends. It depends. If you want to have control over your image and edit it the way that you want, don't get Luminar AI. If you want to have some of these features, go ahead and get Luminar 4. It's probably cheaper. I haven't looked. I only paid $60 because I had Luminar 4 already. And is it worth $60 for me? No, probably not. Probably not. You know, because everything that I would be using was already in Luminar 4. And there's nothing new in Luminar AI that works good enough. You know, it's all buggy and, you know, they've stripped away functionality. We'll dive into some of these images and take a look. But if you don't already have a Luminar product, you know, and especially if you want to have like one-click solutions for stuff, you know, Luminar AI can be a really good solution for you. It could be, you know, a really great thing. But you got to think of it more like kind of a Instagram filter or Snapchat filter on steroids. You know, something that is you know, gives you more control over your image than one of those options would. But don't think of it as much more than that. And don't think that you're going to be able to get this and sell your images in galleries or anything like that. The stuff that it puts out is not quality enough to do that. You can't convincingly make these adjustments. You replace a sky, it looks like it's been replaced. If you go and, you know, add some fog, it's not going to be masked out properly. You know, and from what I saw from the Bokeh AI, which Bokeh AI is supposed to do like a depth of field blur to help isolate your subject, kind of like what the new iPhone portrait mode does. That doesn't work very good. Like it didn't ship. It's going to be released after the fact with a free update. It's funny they say, oh, it's going to be released as a free update. You know, like it's a really good bonus ad, but they sold us on that it was going to be included. It's not a new feature. It's one that was pitched to us when we ordered this thing and never made it in. And, you know, now they're delivering it after the fact. It's It's not a bonus ad, guys. It's something you promised us anyways. It just never made it in. But if the depth of field artificial intelligence works as poorly as the fog masking does, don't even bother releasing it. Skylum, if you ever watch this, don't even bother releasing it. Honestly, not unless you can get the AI functionality better. Because the example that I saw when you guys were demoing it, there was an image that you guys did a depth of field blur on with this Bokeh AI, and there were parts of the image that should have been blurred that weren't, and there was no way of telling the AI that it got it wrong. You can't come in, and that's the biggest problem. They're relying so heavily on this artificial intelligence, and saying you have no control. We have no control over what it does. We can't fine tune it. We can't tell it, hey, you missed a spot over here. If you have a subject with his arm out like this, everything around them, even if it's masked perfectly, oftentimes the area in the arm here is left out because the computer doesn't recognize that that's part of the background. Or, another thing is when there's trees sticking straight up. I'll show you an example here in a moment with the fog AI, with the atmosphere AI, that, it completely missed the tree. It got the leaves from the tree, but it completely missed the trunk and the, other stuff in the branches in the foreground, and applied the fog there when it shouldn't. And the result is an image that looks like it's been altered. And you're not gonna be able to sell to galleries or sell your work online if your image looks like it's total BS. And I personally don't want my name attached to anything like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these examples so you can kind of see exactly what I'm talking about here. I lined up a few things for us to play with. Now, I always work with Luminar as a plugin, so I have some images here. We'll go to Luminar AI. Okay. Now, if we take a look here, first thing it always takes you to, which, that's fine. Yeah, it takes you to the templates. These are like presets, and it gives you some examples. It analyzes what your image is, and it does not do a very good job of analyzing what your image is. I've seen stuff like close-ups and, here's one for objects, like it's a still life or something. But if you click into these, you can, click on apply these different presets to it. And usually there's at least one black and white in here somewhere. They're all just way over the top, which is fine. Here's an overcast dynamic result. That's not too bad. Click on the little eyeball over here to toggle before and after, so you can see what the result is. Again, it's way too much, but take a look at this one, Night's Thunder. That gives it a nice kind of cool look. This gives it some warmth, it looks like. Arctic Sea. And one of the cool things that this does is it helps you see kind of at a glance some different looks for your photo that maybe you hadn't considered before, like this Night's Thunder. I mean, it gives it a really strong blue tint to it, but maybe that's, like, for example, I would have never thought to do this with this photo. If it looks really good, maybe that's something I want to do. But I think I'm just going to do this dynamic result here, and we'll just move on. I picked this image in particular because I wanted to show this erase functionality. I have not played around a lot with this, but I am curious to see how well it does here. So the idea, of course, is you select out what you want to erase from a photo. And I want these people gone. We'll see how well of a job it does. And of course, like with any kind of selection, even in Photoshop or any other software, you want to make sure that you select everything from what you are trying to erase. Because if you leave any parts in there that you're telling it to replace, but there's like a sliver of the shoulder left, or part of the toe or a shadow, it's gonna mess up with the results. The results are gonna be skewed a little bit because it's gonna be like, oh, well, they want all of this gone, but they want the shadow still there. So I mean, I try to make sure that there's no kind of haloing or shadows or anything left when I do my selections. And then we click on the erase button here. Let's see what it does. Not the greatest of jobs, but maybe we can come back in here and fix it. Let's see. Try again. Yeah, no. To be completely fair, I don't know that Photoshop could have done a much better job. Yeah, you can see a lot of repetition here. Anytime you see repetition like this, it's it's a bad sign. You could tell it's been replaced, because in nature you wouldn't have these exact looking kind of divots here. So that gets a fail for me. Let's try this one up here, this little random person up at the top. This will probably be a lot easier to do. There's more similar stuff around it to draw, there. That does a pretty good job. I'm not disappointed with that. But this one down here, that's definite no. But, I can go and I can fix that in Photoshop. So I'm not terribly upset by that. Plus, I would be doing this in Photoshop anyways. I'm not going to be using the erase functionality here. But let's take a look at a couple other things real quick. Enhance AI. This is my favorite tool. As you can see, it just it works magic. It will kind of equalize your histogram a little bit. So it kind of, it tries to like equalize your histogram. That's the best thing. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. Like if I have an image that's too dark, it will kind of brighten it up, and it does a great job of like getting your image to where it should, where it should be. Really good. I mean, I love it. I really love that feature. And then smart contrast, I usually drop the smart contrast quite a bit, because that also does a really good job of doing some relative contrast adjustments. So it's not an across the board drop in contrast. It does have some kind of algorithm that it runs so that your contrast is dropped in a smart way. And that actually works really well, and I love it. It's another one of the tools in Luminar 4 that I use on every single picture, almost every single picture. Structure AI, that's the devil. I say stay away from it because it just gives. I mean, I guess some photos may need it, but I shoot in a really high resolution photo format. I have a full frame Canon EOS R, and so my resolution is already high enough. If I go adding any more structure to those images, it gets super crunchy and gross looking. So if anything, I use Structure AI, I'm usually dropping it a little bit just because it helps to kind of soften some of the details. And that's kind of the funny thing about, digital cameras, right? It's like we get them because we want all of this resolution and contrast and sharpness, but a lot of times that bites us in the rear end in our photos, because it's it's too much, especially for some things like this with landscape, where you want the softer tones a lot of times. Maybe if you're doing a cityscape or something in a high contrast situation, maybe you want that. Or, if there's not a lot of details in your image anyways. But for me, more often than not, I'm finding that I have too much detail already, and I need to try and drop that off a little bit. Landscape, it added a dehaze filter to it, which, that's okay. I don't mind it so much. It added a golden hour to try and bring up some of those golden tones. Foliage enhancer, stay away from it. It's just don't even. Just don't even. It makes your greens green, which, you know, you can do that in a lot better ways. And let's see, I'm going to also look at some of these here with you. Over here, the mystical is really nice. Sometimes it kind of gives it a kind of a glowy kind of, it's actually very close to glow. I honestly don't know the difference between this and the glow features, which are in the next one. Usually I'll do a slight, if I want some of this, I'll usually put a little bit of mystical in here, and then an Orton effect from down here. But I always have to adjust my settings a little bit. I don't want it, I want the effect much softer. And a lot of times it tries to brighten it up too much, and I need to get rid of it. Speaking of which, this one boggled my mind. And this thing alone is what tells me that Skylum really was not intending to market this towards the serious photographer. It's probably geared more towards the casual photographer, or somebody who likes to post on Instagram a lot. You know, and that kind of makes sense, because the whole idea of a one-click editing solution, if you're just posting stuff to Instagram, you know, you're not willing to invest hours in editing a photo. Whereas me, I want to sell my work. So, you know, if I spend even days working on a single photo, it's worth it for me, because the end result is going to be sold in a gallery, or you know, shown in a gallery, sold, you know, online, or prints made, you know, you name it. And I take a lot of pride in my work. I don't want a one-click solution, period, end of story. So I'm not the best person for this product. But the histogram is gone. That was the one, and this up here is a menu, believe it or not. I found it by accident, honestly. I had no idea that was even there. And I was so frustrated that there was no histogram or clipping and no layers, and I just started clicking literally on everything. And this was the last thing I clicked on, because I clicked on everything else in this user interface. I had no idea what I thought it would take me to, the, you know, the home page or something like that. But instead, it's a menu, and you can come down here and say show histogram, and you get this tiny little histogram right here. And if we click on it, we can see, oh gee whiz, looky, we've got some blown out stuff. And you know, that is something that when you're doing your editing, you have to keep in mind. Am I blowing out my sky? Am I blowing out my highlights, or clipping my shadows? I mean, those are things that real photographers have to consider when they're doing adjustments in any kind of photo editor. And the fact that it's not prevalent anywhere in the UI causes me great concern, because that tells me this is not meant for a serious photographer. This is meant for somebody who wants to post on Instagram. And that really, really bothers me. Anyways, so we have to adjust the brightness a little bit to try and get rid of some of that clipping. There we go. That's a little bit better. And we can actually, the super contrast here, it was called something else in Luminar 4, I can't remember. But this will also take care of some of your highlights. I do love using this quite a bit. But selectively. Usually there's just parts of my photo that, you know, needs to be adjusted. It's not the whole thing. And so there we have it. You can also use the shadow contrast. That helps to bring up some of the shadows sometimes, and you can, you know, adjust the balance of that. Mid-tone contrast for adjusting midtones. I find that often, though, when you start messing with all of these, it actually works against you. Like, you probably want to just target, you know, one slider, because you start, as you can see here, I'm losing, you know, detail. It's kind of muddying everything up a little bit. But I do kind of like what it's doing to those rocks right there. That's kind of nice. So that's where I would come in with a mask, and I would mask that out, and just apply that effect to just the rocks. And you know, in Luminar 4, I would just come in and do another layer and then apply the same, apply, you know, a different version of this effect to maybe target the trees or the water or sky or something like that. But since they've taken away the ability to do layers now, I can't do that. This is what they give you. This is local masking, and you can add either a basic adjustment or a texture. And if you say texture, it'll here it is. You have to do it this way. You have to load up some kind of image, and then it will let you do it. I'm assuming you could probably do a signature this way, like a watermark maybe, or you could even put some kind of like paper texture over the top of something. I mean, that's kind of cool, but you could do that in 5 seconds in Photoshop. You don't need this program to do this. So I'm going to get rid of that. The other thing is the basic panel. And the basic, you can see here, it just gives you some hot, cool sliders, some exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, AI structure, which AI structure, that's kind of cool because I can either, you know, add it or take it away from different areas. So, I mean, that's good. And then saturation and vibrance, you know, I mean, that's better than nothing, but I think they kind of had to do that because, well, in Luminar 4, if you notice this lights panel here, it doesn't have the ability to mask anything. And so that was something, you know, in Luminar 4, this was also the only panel that you could not do masking on. And if you wanted to apply multiple effects in this area, you would have to go and do a second layer, do another layer, and then, you know, you could, that layer, this did have masking. So so this is the same as in Luminar 4. And I'm going to actually just cancel this, and we're going to move on to the next one here. This lighthouse scene, let's take a look at how the fog works. Atmosphere AI. All right. Go back to templates again. We can try some different effects here. Sunset. Sunset's actually not too bad. I'm not terribly fond of the toning of it, but we can always fix that later. The main thing I wanted to come in here and show you is this augmented sky AI. No, sorry, my bad. Atmosphere AI. Actually, you know what? Let's look at the sky AI. This is what they were originally known for with regard to in Luminar 4. So in Luminar 4, they pretty much blew up the industry when they came out with this, and you notice that everybody's doing sky replacements now, and that is because primarily of, you know, Luminar 4. They're the ones that kind of had this, were the first to do this. Now, you will notice here that this is not perfect. There are gaps here in the trees that are not getting masked correctly. You can see that the sky is bleeding into the lighthouse here a little bit, and it's not going through the glass in the lighthouse. Now, this is a very difficult mask job for any computer. I'm sympathetic to that. But, you know, you start looking at the befores and afters, and you can, well, it is doing something there in the glass of the lighthouse, so maybe it is doing a little bit. But this whole, you know, in the side of the lighthouse, you can't do that. Now, there are quite a bit of controls that you can do here to try and fine-tune this. And I suppose the other thing to probably point out here is that it's actually coming down into the ocean. So I mean, I can't blame them for that because, you know, there's not a real defined horizon there. You know, over here where it can see it, it's, you know, doing an okay job, but you know, and to be fair too, I mean, you probably don't want to do something so extreme anyways, just because you're going to spend a lot of time trying to fix it. So, I mean, you can do stuff like this. I mean, it's very obviously fake. One thing that they did right, I think, is this whole relight the scene. So you can relight the scene to kind of match whatever sky you put in there. You know, and some of these don't look too bad, you know. Horizon position, so we can raise it up a little bit to say, you know, hey, you're too far down. You know, I mean, you can do a lot. The AI is not perfect, but at least we have some control over what we're doing here, which is, you know, pretty good. That's more than what you're able to do in other areas, as we'll see here. Atmosphere AI. Let's take a look at the fog. So I'm going to bump up the fog really bright so you can see what it's doing. I'm actually going to turn off this AI sky so we can look closer at the fog. Now, if you take a closer look, I mean, some of this is going to be how you dial in the sliders, right? But there needs to be some masking done, because when you come over here to a tree, it's going to be darker and it's going to be, you know, it's going to be denser behind the trees and behind the lighthouse. And then, especially when you're coming from the background forward, and then this piece of land here, there's going to be some differentiation there. And it needs to be masking for those things. But like, especially here in the tree, you know, this tree is in the foreground. Come on. The tree's in the foreground. It should not have fog in front of it, but it does. You know, and if I bring the depth up, we can see that, yeah, you know, it's kind of rolling in, but even still, it's trying to put fog in front of this tree when it shouldn't. You know, if there's no fog down here at the bottom of the tree, there shouldn't be any fog at the top of the tree. And, you know, I think it is doing some masking along here, you know, which honestly, this is the first time I've tried using Atmosphere AI on this particular image. And it's only the second image that I've seen any kind of masking. And, you know, and I think it is doing some masking in here, but it's doing it wrong. You know, it's not doing it properly. And, you know, I got to be honest, I couldn't use this. You know, I could not have this fog in my image because it would not be believable. It's not. There's also layered fog, which is, you know, kind of stupid. I mean, look at this. It's, you know, it's not meant for this type of image, which is fine. But again, no masking getting done here. I think there is some getting done over here. Let's see. Yeah, maybe. It's hard to tell. Hard to tell. Mist, which that's going to just kind of be, it's not, mist is, I guess, different from fog somehow. Interesting. So, yeah, there's a difference there. Haze, again, is somehow different from layered fog. I guess just the way that where it's positioned, possibly. I don't know, but, you know, if there is any kind of AI functionality going on here, I don't see it. I don't know the rhyme or reason to it. And it certainly is not as one-click solution friendly as they would like us to think it is. Oh, I should have probably left that and shown you the masking tools. So the masking is very similar to what they had in Luminar 4. Except they did take away the the luminosity mask. It was just a very simple lights to dark luminosity mask, and then you could adjust it from there. But they didn't really give you very many tools for adjusting it. Like you couldn't do an overall darkening of it or an overall brightening of it. All you could do was, you know, use the gradient tools, radial mask, you know, that sort of stuff. You could kind of, in the paintbrush, you could paint on it, but that was it. And, you know, it's very much the same kind of masking that was in Luminar 4. Very clunky. Gosh darn it, I did it again. Invert. There we go. So I want to erase parts of this. So, and every key press, it's going to put this red overlay on it. I know, I don't know why they did that either. It's and it's nothing that you can turn off. It just is what it is. And if you put your brush down to start painting and it doesn't turn red, then your stroke doesn't count. so like you saw there a minute ago, it doesn't happen all the time, but you know, and you know, there's just no great way of masking this stuff out. It doesn't give you the option of doing it in a good way. So, you know, I can get the tree back here, but then you've got halos around the tree, you know, and when you zoom out, you're going to see that. So the masking functionality, I mean, they might as well have just taken masks completely out and, you know, altogether. If they're not going to improve it, if they're not going to make it useful, I mean, just get rid of it altogether and say, hey, we don't have masking. Sorry. You know, I shouldn't say that because then I'd be really bitching about that. So, you know, that's, I'm going to reset that. Let's see. Sun rays are really cool. I'll show you that on a different example. Dramatic, that's another fun one, I guess. It's just so over the top. Not a huge fan of it, just because it really it kind of abstracts your image a little bit too much for my liking. I'm going to cancel, go on to the next one here. So here is the other one that I actually saw, the artificial intelligence. I mean, I got to air quote that. The AI actually masked the fog, and it did a horrible job with that one too. So I'll just really quickly take you into there and show you that. We come in here, creative, atmosphere AI. We're going to crank up this fog quite a bit, bring the depth down, and voila, there you can see it. You know, it's quite it's quite drastic. You know, if I brought down this a little bit, it'd be a little bit harder to see what's going on. But, you know, at the same time, you know, we kind of need to see what's going on, right? So let's look at this from a realistic point of view of what this fog would actually be doing. Number one, you know, the tree would be silhouetted against it, right? So all of these leaves need to be masked properly. And then all of the trunks and branches here of the tree also need to be masked properly. Also down here, you can see that, you know, it's the gradation of tone is not correct. So they're not doing the gradient according to the Z plane here, which is Z plane was, you know, the depth plane. They're not doing that according to the actual depth of the image. They're just applying a gradient. And then same up here, if you look really closely, you can see that the trees, even up here, there's something goofy going on with the masking up there as well. So, you know, when you're looking at images in full screen like this, it's a little bit hard to see what's going on. But when you shrink them down and look at them as like thumbnails, you get a much clearer look of just how ridiculous this particular effect looks. And then one other thing that they do here is this light slider, the lightness of the fog, I'm assuming, but I mean, look what it's doing. You know, I'm assuming this is probably for like a nighttime scene kind of thing, but it's adjusting parts of the image that the fog doesn't even exist in. So I don't understand that. You know, if I wanted to make the fog darker, fine, but don't make my whole image darker, you know? That I don't understand the use of that whatsoever. That's just very strange to me. And finally, I did tell you we'd look at the sun rays. This is a very popular feature. People love sun rays, and I'm one of them. I do love them, but they're really easy to get out of control. You want to try and match where the sun is coming from, make it realistic. It's often best to like put it back behind like a tree or up in some clouds, you know. See, as we move this around, you can see it's interacting with the environment here. There's something really smart going on with the sun rays. I think it's super cool. I am trying to guesstimate where the sun is in this image. I think it's off to the side over here a little bit. And then of course, so you want to, typically if you're placing a sun, you want to have it nice and strong. Place the sun, and then, you know, back it all off and do the different settings here. So the glow radius is, you know, for the, and then the rays. And then you can randomize it a little bit. But it's real easy to get super carried away with this. So you know, unless there should have been sun rays in your image and you know exactly where they, maybe you saw them with your eye, but you just missed it with the camera, or for whatever reason the settings didn't work and you didn't actually get the sun ray, but you know it was there and you're trying to recreate that, you know, then I think it's perfectly acceptable to do sun rays. Within reason. It's real easy to get carried away with this. And you know, make it look fake or unbelievable. So I suggest, you know, doing it and then turning it off, looking at it without it, turning it back on again. And I do this with all of my images, actually. You know, turn it on and off several times just to kind of see what the effect is doing. What does it look like without the effect? You know, am I doing any harm? And I think that's really important to do. And in this case, I think I would probably come up here and, oops, I would erase out the effect up at the top, and just have it kind of shooting down over here because this area is really lit up anyways. And let's say turn that off and come back to here. Well, that was kind of a bug. Anyways, you get the idea, I think. You know, just my advice is keep it subtle. Keep it subtle. You know, and try and do what makes sense. You know, if you've got sun rays coming down, the ground where it should be hitting should be lit up. You know, if you've got like a forest floor and it's dark everywhere, don't put sun rays in because there's no sun hitting the forest floor, so it doesn't make sense for there to be sun rays. And actually looking at where the light is hitting on these. Yeah, I can't really tell where the sun is. It might be behind me. It might have been behind me in this photo. I can't tell for sure. So I'm going to cancel this. We'll go into the one more here. And I'm going to demonstrate how we can get around some of the limitations of not having multiple layers available to us in Luminar AI. That is something that really bothers me about Luminar AI, is that they took out the ability to do layers. So let's take a look at how we can do that, how we can get around that. I'm going to launch Luminar AI, and let's do Night's Thunder. I'm going to pull this back a little bit. It's not quite so overwhelming. And I'm going to come over here and drop my smart contrast, boost my AI structure, or not AI structure, my enhance AI. Here we go. And I may even actually kind of drop the AI structure just a little bit. Color. So I really love the remove color slider. It doesn't, the remove color cast. Remove color cast, I'm not entirely sure what it's doing. I think all it's doing is it's introducing the complementary color. It's like doing an inverse, like an inverse mask over the top of everything. I think that's all it's doing. I haven't been able to tell for sure. It does darken it though. Like if you crank this all the way over, it darkens your whole image, which, you know, sometimes is okay, but other times if you've already got a dark image, you can't let it darken it anymore. What else is it doing in here? So luminance, I'm going to pull back on the greens a little bit and darken those, which, you know, darkening the luminance value of a color or lightening it also is, it's a way of reducing saturation. So it is a great way to kind of desaturate your photos in a more natural looking way instead of yanking the saturation out of them. I think I probably want to... Oh, and I gotta do my clipping. I forgot about my... See, it's really easy when you don't have the histogram visible all the time to kind of muck this up. So it looks like I am going to have to pull back on some of those highlights. And I'm going to do that in a second. I'm first going to come over here to the glow, and I'm going to add a soft focus glow. And then I'm going to come over to super contrast and crank back some of the highlights a little bit. That's not doing what I thought it would. So I'm going to have to come back in here to my curves and actually drop that down a little bit. Is that what I wanted? Yep, I want it to just before it starts to clip out. All right, and I'm going to call that good. I'd probably fuss around with this just a little bit more, but I'm going to call that good for right now. And I'm going to say apply, because I want to add some extra Orton effect to the foliage in the trees. But because there's no ability to do layers, I can't do that. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add another Luminar AI filter. So you can have multiple instances of the Luminar AI filter in your Photoshop document. And this is how you get around the limitation of not having layers. The downside is that you can't mask these layers out and mask out, you know, the different effects. There is a workaround for that as well. It's a little uglier, but I will show you that in a minute. So, oops. Come over here, important effect, and I'm going to crank up some of this a little bit. I'm going to soften it. And look at the before and after. I'm looking specifically at the trees. Perfect. I mean, I'd probably fuss around with it a little bit more, but you get the idea, right? So and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to paint this effect in the parts of the trees that I want. Use my tablet here to get some more precise painting in here of the areas that I want affected. Kind of paint all around in here. Obviously, if this was, you know, my finished product, I would be spending way more time masking this out. Because despite what Skylum wants me to believe, would have us believe, some of us really don't mind spending a lot of time working on photos. You know, and I guess their argument would be then, you know, is this the right product for you? That's a valid argument. You know, it's I don't know if you saw that, but I was actually trying to brush there and it didn't take because the overlay didn't happen. As I did it again. You know, that's really frustrating. And I think, you know, I honestly think that part of the issue here with Luminar's or with Skylum is they're doing stuff that I think is they're trying to get notarized for. They got such wonderful praise for the sky replacement, which, you know, wasn't perfect. It had its problems. But instead of fine-tuning that and making it better, they've tried to do something else that will get them the notoriety and the praise and the headlines that they want. And you know, that's really shameful. You know, don't. You know, their customers are not just publicity stunts. You know, we're not. You know, we have needs. We have things that we want to do with their products and things that we've come to expect from their products. And for us not to be able to get that now is just a real shame. It's a real shame that we have to now kind of try and find something else because they're not going to be supporting Luminar 4 much longer. So, you know, what are we supposed to do? And some of these greens got a little bit more saturated again. I'm going to drop these down just a little bit. There we go. You know, and I want to be extra clear too. It's you know, a lot of the things that I'm doing in here, like with the HSL slider, you know, even some of the contrast and textures and softening of the image and that a lot of that can be done in other software suites. You know, you don't have to do it in Luminar AI. It is convenient that it's there because you don't have to keep switching around to different programs and so forth. But you know, it doesn't have to be Luminar AI. You can do it in other stuff. But there are some things that they do better. And that's one of the reasons I love keeping them around is because of like the smart contrast and the enhanced AI and all of that. I think it's just, you know, groundbreaking stuff. Now, I did tell you we were going to talk about how you can mask additional effects. And you're not going to like it, but here's what it is. You do Control-J, Command-J on a Mac, and you create a duplicate copy. And you add the effect to the duplicate copy. So we're going to come in here, Luminar AI again. And you could do like stamp visible if you wanted to, but the problem you run into with that is, you know, if you change something, if you have a smart object and it's actually like an editable smart object, like it's a bunch of layers that you've converted to a smart object, and you change it, then the change wouldn't be reflected in the second duplicate. So, you know, it's up to you how you want to do it. I like having those as linked. I refer to them as linked smart objects because they're, you know, linked to each other. I don't know if that's the correct terminology for it or not, but so let's say, let's say I want to make the water brighter. Let's go ahead and do that. Oh, I gotta add clipping notifications. There we go. And I'm going to pull back on some of that. Enhance AI. Do I want to enhance it? What's it do? A little bit. I definitely want to try and remove some of the structure in the water. Because I did shoot with a polarizing filter here, and you know, maybe I don't, maybe I want a little bit of the brightness of the running water, because that will do some cool stuff. You know, maybe add a little mystical, add a little glow. There. And so these changes are targeting just the water. Okay. I'm going to say apply. And after it's done here, I'm going to press the Alt or what is that? Option key on a Mac, and hit the mask button. That'll create a negative mask. And I am going to start painting in this effect where I want it. So soft brush. I'm just going to do 100% flow just for the sake of speed here, and come in and just start painting in the water where I want it. And, you know, you could never probably do that good of a job in this good of a job of masking in Luminar AI, or Luminar 4. You know, it just doesn't have this masking capability to it. So in some ways, you know, in some ways it almost doesn't even matter that it's missing, because I wouldn't be able to be using it anyways. But it's just kind of a show of good faith that, you know, they're trying to do something that will benefit the professionals out there, or the aspiring professionals. You know, people who don't just want to have a one-click solution to post crap to Instagram. You know, I mean, there's a market for it. Maybe that's what they're trying to tap, is that market for the next great Instagram filter. And, you know, in that case, congratulations, Skylum. You know, you've created the next Snapchat filter. That's awesome. You know, but for us serious professionals who actually do want to make something of our work, you know, they've done us a great disservice. And I'm, if you can't tell, very upset by it. So, but this is how you could go and, you know, edit multiple effects into there. So you're doing the masking in Photoshop instead of Skylum, Luminar AI. So before and after. I mean, it's a horrible masking job, but you know, you can do a lot of things here that you wouldn't be able to do elsewhere. Like I can create a luminosity mask for like the greens, and maybe I just paint in some more of these. Well, let's do it. Let's do it real quick. Let's grab. Maybe I want some of these highlights to only be in the green areas, in the highlights of the green areas. So I'm going to just do a simple mask selection here, and then I'm going to just kind of brush in, oops, white as the foreground color. And I'm just going to paint in some of this adjustment into the brighter areas of the green foliage. And see how nicely working with luminosity masks in combination with Luminar, you know, can make a huge difference in bringing out some of the highlights in this image. You know, it's kind of remarkable, actually. So, I mean, there's a lot of good that can come out of it, and you know, some not so good. So there you have it. That's kind of my review of Luminar AI. You know, it has a lot of great stuff in it. You know, there's a lot of things that are really good. Smart contrast, the enhance AI, you know, the glow and Orton effects and things like that. Even sky replacement has its place. There's enough tools in sky replacement that you can massage it to do what you need it to do. It doesn't have to be, it's not as absolute as you saw the atmosphere AI was. You know, the atmosphere AI, I mean, Skylum really is rubbish. It is garbage. Garbage. Absolute garbage. And it's unusable. You know, I mean, maybe in really light, you know, kind of circumstances you can get away with a little bit, but you can do a much better job in Photoshop. Much better job. You know, just by doing some simple masking. You know, the example that I showed, if I had taken that and done the fog, I could have come back and used the luminosity mask to mask out that tree. You know, and it's clear that they don't want masking to be a focus of Luminar. They want one-click solutions, but it's not a one-click solution. You know, you have to go and fine-tune a lot of stuff, and then what is one-click, the stuff that they're like calling this AI, you know, it's not very intelligent artificial intelligence. You know, it's kind of dumb. It doesn't do a whole lot, and it gets it wrong a lot of the time. And their incessant need to like remove tools that would allow us to help fix some of those problems. I'm just really scratching my head at what they're thinking. So, you know, I do not recommend Luminar AI. There's a couple things that are in this version that are cool. Templates are kind of cool, but there's only so many of them. You know, I'm sure they have a Luminar X membership that would give you access to more skies and more templates and more this and more that, but it's more money too. I'm sure as hell not going to pay a membership fee for crap software that they are taking further and further away from what will benefit me as a photography professional. So no, I'm not going to be doing that. Honestly, buy Luminar 4. Hurry up and get it before they stop supporting it and stop offering it. I don't know when that is, but probably will happen at some point. And I would say just grab Luminar 4. The stuff that is really helpful is in there. All the new stuff that's in Luminar AI, I mean, I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything that's worthwhile yet. The templates were cool for a minute. The minute's almost over. And then it'll be, oh yeah, okay, well, I know what that is. Oh yeah, well, I know what that is. You know, it did have a really nice wow factor at first. But, you know, their AI technology, again, I come back to, they are trying to create a buzz with, you know, artificial intelligence. They're trying to recapture what they had with Luminar 4. Which was a lot of people saying, wow, look, a one-click solution for replacing your skies. That is so awesome. You know, and somebody in sales and marketing or at the CEO level or whatever said, oh, that's what people want. They want one-click solutions. And no, that's not what we want. Automating complex tasks for us is what we want. You know, giving us creative freedom. That's what we want. We do not want to be pigeonholed into a world where a computer is telling us how our picture should look. We want the freedom to discover that for ourselves, and that is part of the creative process, is discovering that. One of the biggest, coolest moments for me in Luminar AI was discovering a whole new way of looking at one of my photos that I've edited, several times already. That was more kind of the bluish tones, like what we saw here, the one with the river coming down in the forest. I've never edited the photo that way, and it looks phenomenal. I would have never thought to edit it that way. But, kind of just clicking around the templates, it was something that caught my eye, and I was like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Let me give this a try and see what this turns out like. And it's, that kind of discovery process, yes, that's cool, and that works. But to say that I want to add fog to my image and have a computer try and tell me what that fog should look like, or that mist, or that haze, or whatever you want to call it, is not something that I want to invest in, and it's not okay. So I want to have control ultimately over what the computer is doing to my images. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up, hit the bell for notifications, and subscribe, and I will talk to you on the next video. Bye.